My son was diagnosed with something far worse than cancer. "Mommy, my privates hurt." Was there any way for me to know how frightening those 4 words were at the time? Like any mother would do, I got on my knees. "Let me see." My 5-year-old son pulled down his pants and showed me. As I looked, a shock of fear went through me. His testicles were red and swollen. I tried not to panic and thought about what it could be. Nothing other than the worst-case scenario came to mind. The night before, during bath time, his privates looked normal. What the hell happened? Trying my best to not scare my son, quietly, I told him to pull up his pants and put on his shoes. We arrived at the doctor's office 20 minutes later. After the examination, the doctor sent my son into the waiting room and called me in to have a private conversation. Private conversation? No pun intended. "Is it bad?" I asked. The doctor gave me a look that I had scarcely ever seen, as if what I just asked was the biggest understatement of all time. "Is it cancer?" "Please sit down," he said. I haven't seen anything like this during my time as a doctor, that's for sure. I've already had a colleague of mine on the phone. "We're gonna need an ultrasound." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Tell me he's going to be okay." "I can't say for sure, but I can tell you that if it is some type of cancer, testicular is the easiest to treat." He paused. "You said he's 5 years old?" I nodded and said, "I don't understand how he hasn't reached puberty yet, so this can't be normal for a boy his age. Can it?" "Before we jump to any conclusions," the doctor said, "we need to see the ultrasound." Before paying for the visit, the doctor handed me a note with the date and location of the hospital where the ultrasound would be done. He also advised that I set an ice pack over my son's groin every 2 hours in case the irritation got worse. First thing the next morning, I drove to the address on the note and met with a man named Dr. Jasper Harris. "Hello," he said to me, and then he looked down at my son. He kneeled to his level. "Hello, what's your name?" my son answered. The small talk was making me nervous. All I wanted was to get the procedure done and over with. The faster this would get done, the faster my baby would get back to normal. Dr. Harris led us both into a room and gave my son a hospital gown. I sat in the waiting room with a book while my son was scanned. Though I was looking at the pages, I wasn't reading. My mind was elsewhere, on my son. Later, Dr. Harris came into the waiting room with a dour look on his face. "Come with me," he said. He brought me into a room full of medical computers. "Please take a seat." He pulled up a chair next to a large screen. He then showed me the x-rays. "Oh my God," I said, and covered my mouth. The x-rays showed 2 testicles that were larger than any you'd see on a grown man. Both of them came up white on the ultrasound. "Surgery must be done immediately." Dr. Harris said, "I've never seen anything like this. It seems as if the tumors have encapsulated his testicles." I whimpered in the chair. A hand rested on my shoulder to console me. It didn't help. "Please," I said, "save my son." Nothing could be done that day because of complications due to the coronavirus. I was lucky enough to even have gotten an appointment for the ultrasound that day. So I counted my blessings and stayed patient. At this point, my son was almost completely in the dark about the whole thing, or so I thought. We were driving home from the hospital. He was sitting in his booster seat when he asked, "Mama?" I looked at his reflection in the mirror. "Yes?" "When we die, do we go to heaven like Grandma says?" I was speechless. What was I supposed to say? And how did the idea of death get on his mind? Did the doctor say something to him? Was it just a coincidence? Or was there some kind of primal intuitiveness that made him aware of how severe his illness was? A single tear slipped down my cheek. I don't know, baby. He lay there on the operating table, unconscious. The surgeon and his helpers were shuffling about, preparing for the incision of the cancerous bulbs hanging between my son's legs. Before my son was put under, he cried and made it clear that he wanted me in the room while the surgery was performed. I want you with me, he'd said. To me, it sounded as if he hadn't finished the sentence, as if he was trying to say, I want you with my in case I die. I stood in the corner of the cold operation room, wearing a medical apron, rubber gloves, face mask, and a pair of goggles. I was looking at my feet, waiting for the inevitable. Would he be a freak to his peers? An outcast to society? Would he ever find someone to love him? Not as a mother, but as a lover. These strange, unwanted thoughts floated in my mind like a rocket on a predetermined trajectory through the star systems of the cosmos. They told me not to watch if I didn't want to. I wasn't. But once I heard the scalpel cut through flesh, there was this sound, a wriggling sound, a sloppy, greasy, writhing sound. The bodies of the medical professionals surrounded my son, so I was unable to see him. I stood on my toes, but I still wasn't tall enough to see. Oh my God, a nurse said. What the surgeon said through his covered face. Wet slapping sounds came. Something was dropping on the room's floor. Blood? The doctor and nurses stood back. One nurse yipped and dropped a stainless steel tool she had been holding. She ran out of the room, the door swinging behind her. The sound of wet drips still came. I looked at the surgeon's feet. Something was wiggling on the floor. Snakes? No, too small for that. Centipede? No, they didn't have legs. As the surgeon and the remaining nurse moved away from the table, I was able to see everything. Everything cracked open like eggs. Honey, breakfast is ready. Come in, Mom. Mommy? Yes? My private's hurt. Parasite. Wet goo and slime from a world far beyond the comprehension of the human imagination spewed out from between my baby's legs. But no, let's not be too melodramatic. I'll just say it clearly and simply. My son's testicles had a nest of fucking worms inside of them. They writhed and squirmed and moved and slopped over the table, down to the floor, and over the shoes of the surgeon and nurse. And guess what? Next thing I remember was blackness. I fainted and cracked my head on the tile floor. I was removed from the room and woke up in a chair located in the large waiting area. I remember squinting because the chair I was sitting in faced the windows where the sunset was. Where was I? Right, the hospital, 3rd floor. A nurse, with scrubs that were a size too small for her, came over with a cup of water. How did they allow nurses to wear that? Her boobs were practically hanging. Ma'am? I blinked, and then my eyes focused on the nurse's face. Yes? I said. Please drink this. My son. I bolted straight up. Where's my son? Those things. Is he all right? Water tipped over the rim of the paper cup as she put a hand on my shoulder to sit me back down. He's fine, she answered. There were just a few minor complications. Minor complications. Ha ha ha. Very funny. Wiggle, wiggle, woo. He lost some blood, but the procedure is over. You can see him in a few hours. I talked to the surgeon about what happened at the operation table. The only answer I got regarding what was inside of my son was, we're not completely sure what they are or what species of parasitic organisms they belong to. We've run some tests to see if he still had any left inside, but we're not sure if he's clean. We'll have to put him on mebendazole. It's the best we can do for now. And that was it. The men in the black suits showed up to interview me, my son, the surgeon, and both nurses. Who were they? The fuck would I know? It's been 2 months since the operation. My son had to stay in a rehabilitation center for about a month and a half, which wasn't fun for either of us. I'm now on anxiety medication. It started the day after I took my son home for the first time in a while. I just lay awake at night, worrying about him. Frequently, like every 5 minutes, I would get out of bed and go into his room to check on him. I wouldn't get any sleep, and I had to spend time away from work. Things have been hard lately because of it. Child support is next to nothing. No thanks to my ex-husband. At least it seems like the medication is working, so now I'm able to sleep. They sent my son home with a clean bill of health, -2 testicles, or so they thought. I'm sitting in a waiting room once again. Yesterday, while eating a bowl of cereal and watching the Idiot Box, my son stepped out of his bedroom and shuffled into the kitchen. He said 4 words. "Mommy, my eyes hurt."